Most people think they know what dementia looks like. They picture someone forgetting names, misplacing their keys, or asking the same question over and over. And while memory loss can certainly be a sign of dementia, it is often not the first sign. In fact, some people experience changes for months or even years before serious memory problems become obvious. That's why so many families miss the early warning signs. They assume these changes are simply part of getting older. They blame stress, they blame poor sleep, they blame retirement, loneliness, or simply having a lot on their mind. But according to dementia experts, some of the earliest signs can appear in ways that have nothing to do with forgetting things. Today, we're going to look at 5 early signs of dementia that are commonly overlooked. As you listen, think not only about yourself, but also about a spouse, a sibling, a parent, or a close friend. You may recognize something that suddenly makes sense. Let's begin. Think about all the small decisions you make every day. Planning meals, paying bills, keeping track of appointments, following instructions, managing medications. For most people, these tasks happen almost automatically. But one of the earliest effects of dementia can be a decline in what's called executive function. This is the brain's ability to organize, plan, and solve problems. At first, the changes can be very subtle. Maybe balancing your monthly budget suddenly feels confusing. Maybe you have to read instructions several times before they make sense. Perhaps you've cooked the same recipe for 20 years, but now you find yourself forgetting steps or mixing up ingredients. You may notice that tasks take much longer than they used to. Simple decisions become frustrating. Situations that once felt routine begin to feel mentally exhausting. One older adult described it this way: "I could still do everything. It just felt like my brain had to work twice as hard." That's an important distinction. Early dementia doesn't necessarily mean a person cannot do something. Often, it means doing it requires much more effort than before. And because these changes happen gradually, many people simply adapt without realizing something is changing. If planning, organizing, or problem-solving consistently feels harder than it did a year ago, it may be worth discussing with a healthcare professional. This sign surprises many people. When we think about dementia, we don't usually think about judgment, but researchers have found that changes in decision-making can appear very early. You might notice someone making choices that seem unusual for them. Perhaps they become overly trusting of strangers. Maybe they answer suspicious phone calls and believe claims that would once have seemed obviously false. They may give money to scammers, purchase things they don't need, or make financial decisions that are out of character. In some cases, a person may stop paying bills on time even though they have enough money. Others may forget important financial responsibilities that they previously managed well for decades. The same thing can happen with personal care. A person who always took pride in their appearance may suddenly seem less concerned about grooming, bathing, or changing clothes. Family members often notice these changes first. Unfortunately, they sometimes assume the person is simply being careless, but the reality may be more complicated. The brain regions responsible for judgment and decision-making can be affected early in the disease process. This means a person may genuinely have difficulty recognizing poor choices, and that's why these changes deserve attention rather than criticism. Many people become less socially active as they age. That's completely normal. What isn't normal is losing interest in activities that once brought genuine enjoyment. Imagine someone who always loved church gatherings, family dinners, card games, gardening, or community events. Then, little by little, they stop participating. They decline invitations. They spend more time alone. They seem disconnected from the things they once enjoyed. Family members may assume they're simply tired or becoming more private, but there may be another explanation. For some people, social situations become harder because the brain is struggling to process information efficiently. Following conversations requires more effort. Remembering names takes more concentration. Keeping up with group discussions becomes tiring. Rather than feeling embarrassed, many people simply withdraw. It's easier to stay home than to struggle in public. Researchers have also identified apathy as a common early symptom. Apathy doesn't mean laziness, it means a loss of motivation. A person may not feel excited about things they once cared about. They may spend more time sitting quietly. They may seem emotionally flat. And because this change develops gradually, loved ones often overlook it. But a noticeable loss of interest in life deserves attention. This is one of the most common signs that families notice. The person still knows what they want to say. The problem is getting the words out. Perhaps they stop in the middle of a sentence. They search for simple words. They lose their train of thought more often. Or they substitute unusual descriptions for common objects. For example, instead of saying microwave, they might say that machine that heats food. Instead of saying watch, they may say the thing that tells time. At first, these moments seem harmless. After all, everyone forgets a word now and then. But with dementia, the problem becomes more frequent. Conversations may be slower. Stories may be harder to follow. The person may repeat themselves because they forget they already shared the information. Family members sometimes notice another pattern. The person begins speaking less, not because they have nothing to say, but because talking has become more difficult. Imagine knowing exactly what you want to express, but struggling to find the right words. That can be frustrating, and over time, many people become quieter simply to avoid that frustration. Language difficulties are often dismissed as normal aging, yet they can be one of the earliest clues that something deeper is happening. Perhaps the most overlooked sign of all is a change in personality. Many people assume dementia affects only memory, but the brain also controls emotions, reactions, and behavior. As certain areas of the brain change, personality can change as well. Someone who was always patient may become irritable. Someone who was confident may become anxious. Someone who was trusting may become suspicious. Some individuals become fearful. Others become unusually worried. Even familiar situations may suddenly feel uncomfortable. Family members often describe it by saying, "Something just seems different." And that's exactly what makes this sign so important. The changes may be difficult to measure. There isn't a simple test for them, but loved ones often sense that the person's personality is shifting. One spouse may notice their partner becoming unusually withdrawn. A daughter may notice her father becoming more easily frustrated. A friend may notice someone becoming suspicious without reason. Of course, everyone experiences stress, grief, and difficult periods in life. But when personality changes persist and appear alongside other symptoms, they should not be ignored. Here's the challenge. Most of these symptoms don't look dramatic. They don't happen overnight. They appear little by little. A small change this month, another change 6 months later, a few more changes next year. Because the progression is gradual, family members adapt, the person adapts, everyone adjusts to the new normal, and before long, changes that would have seemed concerning years earlier begin to feel ordinary. That's why awareness matters. Recognizing early symptoms doesn't mean jumping to conclusions, it simply means paying attention. Many conditions can mimic dementia. Poor sleep, medication side effects, vitamin deficiencies, depression, hearing loss, even dehydration can sometimes affect thinking and behavior. The good news is that early evaluation can help identify the cause, and if dementia is involved, early detection often gives families more time to plan, learn, and access support. If there's one message I hope you take away from today's video, it's this. Dementia is not always about forgetting. For many people, the earliest signs appear long before serious memory loss becomes obvious. Sometimes it starts with small changes in judgment. Sometimes it shows up in conversations. Sometimes it appears as a loss of interest in favorite activities. And sometimes family members notice personality changes before anyone notices memory problems. That's why it's so important not to dismiss every change as just getting older. Growing older naturally brings certain changes. You may need more time to learn something new. You may occasionally forget a name or misplace your reading glasses. That happens to almost everyone. But when changes become frequent, noticeable, and begin affecting everyday life, they deserve attention. And attention does not mean panic. It does not mean assuming the worst. It simply means being curious enough to ask questions, being willing to have a conversation with a healthcare professional, being open to finding out whether something more is going on. One of the biggest mistakes families make is waiting too long. They tell themselves things will probably get better. They assume the changes are temporary, or they hope the problem will simply go away on its own. Meanwhile, months or even years can pass. The earlier changes are recognized, the more opportunities there may be to understand what's happening and make informed decisions. And perhaps most importantly, early recognition allows families to face the future together rather than being caught by surprise. If you're watching this and recognizing some of these signs in yourself, remember this: not every symptom means dementia. Many medical conditions can cause similar changes. Problems with sleep, hearing loss, depression, stress, medication side effects, vitamin deficiencies, and other health concerns can sometimes affect thinking and behavior in ways that look surprisingly similar. That's why getting answers matters. Knowledge is always better than uncertainty. And if you're watching because you're concerned about someone you love, try to approach the situation with patience. Remember that changes in thinking or behavior are often frustrating and confusing for the person experiencing them as well. What may look like stubbornness, carelessness, or lack of effort could actually be a sign that they're struggling with something they don't fully understand themselves. A little compassion can go a long way. As our brains age, paying attention to these early signs is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves and the people we care about. Because when it comes to brain health, awareness is not about fear. It's about preparation, it's about understanding, and it's about giving ourselves the best possible chance to maintain independence, quality of life, and meaningful connections with the people around us. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Before watching this video, which of these 5 signs surprised you the most? Have you ever noticed one of them in yourself, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, or a close friend? Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Many people find comfort in knowing they're not alone, and your story may help someone else who is facing similar concerns. And if you enjoy clear, practical information about healthy aging and staying independent later in life, there are many more topics we'll be exploring together. Thank you for spending these minutes with us today, and we'll see you again in the next video.